Okay, here we are, Napoli Nation. This has been a long time coming. Me and my son have been thinking about doing this for quite some time now, and I thought it was the perfect time to start doing this little show that we've been talking about when he came to Italy, so that we could go to some games together and just sit down face to face and talk about stuff, and then get the show kicked off. Um, so I just want to give you a little bit of background of, what Napoli Nation is in my view. And I really want this to be something that the entire globe can tune into and just try to get a perspective of the boots on the ground experience that I'm able to have while I'm living in Italy. And whenever my son comes over here and visits, so that you guys can just see what it's like for us as a father and son going to games. It's super emotional for me, and I'd like to share that emotion with everybody out there. Napoli Nation began a long time ago when I was actually stationed in Naples, Italy, as a active duty sailor, and it started out as a fan club, and it just grown and grown and grown, and now it's at this point where it's not all about just the Americans in Napoli, but it's about every Napoli supporter around the globe. So yeah, welcome to Napoli Nation, and I'm sure my son wants to say something, don't you?
Yeah, so I'll introduce myself real quick as well. My name is Mario, son of Daniel Bowen here. Napoli Nation is one of the things I'm most proud of my dad doing. He started this way back in what, 2011, 2010, I believe.
Officially 2012 is when,
2012
yeah.
officially. And ever since then, I've always wanted to be a part of something. And I think this is a great way to start.
The other thing that I want to do before we get into any of the pre-match and post-match and everything else we're going to talk about today, which we'll talk about as often as we can without making the show too long on Napoli Nation, is it's been an idea to do this for a while. I did something really, really short with Ralph Pizzato, and he may be watching this afterwards. And I just want to say thanks to you for, giving me some guidance at the very, very beginning of wanting to do this. At that point, it was just something I wanted to do for fun, nothing else. I really didn't know what the hell I was doing at all. So I appreciate the stuff that you've shown me and all the advice that you've given me. And then so Henry Bell is out there. He's probably going to be listening. I appreciate you having me on your show several times. I love your show with Michele Borelli. It's very original, and I love listening in. And then lastly, two of my huge mentors that I've went to over and over and over again for advice is Dom from Napoli Talk and Joe from Forza Napoli Pod. And we're going to bring them in right now.
Come in, guys.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. Yourself?
All good. It's a pleasure to be here. While I'm at it, I just want to say that I wish you guys the best of luck. I know you're gonna smash it because I know you guys, and I'm sure the fans will love the show as well.
Thank you, Dom.
Yeah, I just want to echo those sentiments. I mean, first of all, congratulations. It's so great to see you guys finally get this on the road, get it started. It's a genuine, true honor to be a guest. I'm sure Dom will agree on the inaugural episode. But as Dom said, we already know it's going to be a big hit just because of the passion that you guys have as Napoli fans, and from what you guys gave us a little sneak peek of what to expect. So I can assure everyone that's watching and listening that you're not gonna be disappointed. I'm looking forward to chatting today.
So yeah, let's get right into it, fellas. The first thing that I would really, really like to talk about is the matches, of course. And we'll start with the Inter Napoli match. First match back from the huge break, almost felt like it was the beginning of a new season. And I mean, the first thing that I recognize from the very, very beginning is just that, Napoli was rusty. It was obvious. And they were not quite in the best shape physically. So their fitness wasn't quite there. But there were some things that my son, saw specifically in the match play that he wanted to talk about a little bit. So go ahead, Mario.
Yeah, easily. I would just start off by saying Inter came out guns blazing. They seemed like the team that was much more prepared for this match. They were relying heavily on setting people back and countering, and to their credit, it did work in their favor. For example, the assist that Di Marco did give to a Dzeko, that was a great example of a counter. And just off that, that's what I seen from it.
The one thing that I did notice was in the second half, it seemed to be that Napoli came a little bit more into their game. They started creating a little bit of the chances that they needed to try to get back into the game. It wasn't great by any means, but Raspadori did have a very, very good shot on goal. It's just unfortunate that it went right into the goalie. So I felt like their second half was better. The other thing that, we don't really like to talk about the refs really much, but to me, man, it was obvious that the refs did impact the game in a negative way. They let Cavada get beat up pretty bad, and it seemed like there was a lot of no calls and even some yellow cards that were missed. What you think about your man of the match and the flop of the match, Mario?
Man of the match, if we're talking both teams, it's easily for me Barella. He seemed to control the tempo of the game. Defensively and offensively, he was willing to always get back on a defense. And for me, I always look at the midfield just because I feel like that's our strongest point. And in my opinion, he definitely made us look weaker.
Yeah, and I think my man of the match, I mean, the player that seemed to be always threatening and the one that made that incredible cross to Dzeko, I mean, that cross it couldn't have been any better, was Di Marco. He was just everywhere on the field from what I saw. And then I can't really pick anybody from Napoli that I think played worse than anybody else. They just all looked really, really bad. So for me, it was the entire team really that's my flop of the match. What do you guys think, Dom? What did you take from that game?
I took that maybe so everything you guys said I agree with. If I had to add something a little different, it would be the mentality is not yet there in the sense that sometimes when you go into these games with a lot of points at your advantage, you've got two results that are fine, a draw and a win. And sometimes that means you don't know how to approach the game. You don't know if you should attack Inter and go for the win or you should sit back and hold the draw. That means you're always tentative. You don't maybe quite know what you're doing. Inter had the one result at their disposal. They had to win the game. So they had a game plan. They knew exactly what they were doing. You could tell that the players on the field knew what they were doing. Whereas us, we were a bit caught between two minds at times, whether we should be attacking, defending, putting numbers in the box or not. And that's just something that, for example, I hope we don't do against Juve. We technically still there have two results at our disposal. I hope we stick to something. If Spalletti wants to play for a draw, fine, but play for a draw. If you want to play for a win, fine, but play for a win. Don't get caught between two minds. So that's something that we need to improve on as a team. And that's just a little bit of insight that I wanted to share with you upon reflection of the game after several days.
And for you, Joe, what did you see throughout the match?
Yeah, so again, I agree with everything you guys have said. I think Inter definitely looked like the better prepared squad, the fitter squad, even both so physically and in terms of game plan. Napoli looked a little bit rusty. Defensively, we were shakier than we have been. We've been really solid at the back this season. In that first half, Inter was creating a lot of chances. They were taking advantage of that ball over the top. And though Lukaku didn't have a great match and it seems like he's injured again, he created a lot of problems just with his strength and his ability to hold up the ball, right? Like he missed that chance fine, but he played a couple of important crosses. I think very early in the match, he played a cross to the second post that Di Marco missed a good chance. And then the Darmian chance also started with Lukaku holding up the ball, picking out Dzeko in the area, and he laid it off to Darmian. So he was causing a lot of problems. Dzeko, you could probably throw his name in the hat for man of the match as well. One, because he scored, but I thought of him and Lukaku, he was also very good, probably better than Lukaku from a striker perspective. And then, Mario, you talked about the midfield and the importance of that. And that's where I think we lost the match, right? Because and tactically we were, I guess, in a bit of a disadvantage. It's on Spalletti to find a way to break through that 5-man midfield, because the way Inzaghi set up, we were outnumbered, it seemed like, everywhere on the park. Because, and I think it's because of that 5-man midfield. So they, what I noticed that Inter did is, one, obviously they played defensively, and in a way, and I mentioned this on my show as well, I think we can look at that as a sign of respect, because Inter played us the way we used to play against them when they were a top club, right? Like, they sat back and they defended and they protected the middle of the park and waited for their opportunity to counterattack. So we were the big club in effect in this match. But that strategy was really effective, because what it did was it forced us to use the wings. And that's not where we excel. We excel with quick exchanges, patterns of play in the middle of the park. And when we're forced to go out wide, while we do still have good players, obviously Cavada is a very good player, a little bit rusty as well because he didn't play the few games before the break. Um, Politano on the other side, neither Politano or Lozano, like Dan said, no one really had a good game, but they didn't do a whole lot. And when you're playing on the wings, you're more likely to cross the ball into the area. But when you're doing that against Inter, they have three giants that are waiting there. Yeah, we have Osimhen, but they had Skriniar, Acerbi had like the game of his life. Bastoni, they were all just eating everything up. So I think Inzaghi got the best of Spalletti in that one, and now it's on Spalletti to figure out how to respond to that type of tactic, because the whole league saw that match, right? So now they know one way that could beat Napoli, and Spalletti has to figure out a way to counter that.
All right, thanks, Joe. The one other thing I wanted to mention was just the experience of being at the stadium there, and I don't want to talk a whole lot about it, but um, that stadium was packed to the rim. Every seat was full, and I had never seen San Siro like that. It was mesmerizing to see that. Even the nosebleed seats, you couldn't see any empty area. Our visitor section was almost full, and due to the fact that it was restricted on who could come, as we all know, the ultras weren't there, so I could really tell that there's a difference there with the visitor section. But even the visitor section was very, very full. Unlike the Roma game that I went to, in the Roma game, it was like half empty. It was depressing. It pissed me off, to be honest, because I just think that some of that crap, when the restrictions are made, are just laziness from the security and how they don't want things to, get to the point where they might have to really, really make a huge effort to keep things under control. But the visitor section was there to cheer on Napoli, and I was impressed with who was there. But it was obvious that the ultras were missing. All right, so I think that's about enough on the Inter match. The result wasn't what we were looking for, but if there was one match to lose, in my opinion, that was the match to lose. Right after the break, I think it woke them up a little bit, as we saw in the Sampdoria match soon after that, and we'll go over that next. So for me, the biggest thing that I actually remember about that match wasn't something that's very easy to talk about. It choked me up a little bit. Was the just the way that they were remembering two of their iconic players in Gianluca Vialli and Sinisa Mihajlovic. I was in the city also with my boy, and we also walked around a little bit with Oma from Nigeria, the journalist. It's part of our Napoli community now. He's pretty much turned into a Napolitano himself, so that's really cool to see. But we were walking around, man, and there's a piazza there. I can't remember the name of the piazza. You remember the name of the piazza, Mario?
Piazza Ferrari.
Ferrari. Okay. Yeah, in that piazza there was a huge building, and it had a projection of some images of Gianluca Vialli, and that was pretty emotional too. So other than watching Napoli, of course, that was the biggest thing that I took away from that match, and just seeing how the ultras of that stadium, and the atmosphere was crazy. The scarves that everybody put up, it seemed like every single person in the stadium had a scarf to put up in the air. So it was pretty emotional for me. I have to admit, I did get choked up a little bit. What about you, Mario? What are one of the things that you saw in the match that you wanted to talk about?
That I saw in the match or I saw live in the stadium?
Well, live in the stadium. You can talk about that first if you want.
Live in the stadium, I want to first get into it's very, very disorganized in the away section. It was a nightmare to get through there. I think it took us, 25, 30 minutes to get to our seats. So I don't mean to sound like that, but it looked like a jail cell in there. The way that they served the drinks, I'm pretty sure we'll have a picture up there eventually, but it had 2 bars and just literally they would squeeze it right through just like that. I was pretty much in like a prison cell.
Listen, man, during halftime, I went down there before the actual halftime started because it wasn't like I was going to get a Coke or beer or even a sip of water at halftime like every other away game because you can't. It's a nightmare trying to get anything in the visitor section during halftime. So I went down there a little bit before half kicked off, before the halftime was over, and I just got a Coke and got a water, and yeah, I do need to put that picture up eventually.
Yeah, I'll put it up there.
It literally looked like you were going into somewhere out in the middle of the city to get your drugs from a drug dealer. It was a little freaking hole with a couple bars here, and the Coke and the water barely comes in. It was crazy. And I looked in there, I was like, am I really getting a Coke and water here? Is this all you're giving me? This doesn't feel right. It was crazy to see that. I'd never seen that before. Usually, it's an open area. You can at least see the people that are in there. We got to post that picture, Mario, because that was crazy. And then, during the match, oh, man. So that combination between Rui and Osimhen was one of our best overall team plays of the entire season. It started with Osimhen and ended with Osimhen. That cross by Rui was right where it needed to be, and Osimhen timed it perfectly. And there's a reason that Rui is among league leaders in assists, and a reason that Victor is leading the league in goals. And that play, I think, was a very, very good example of that. Was there anything else from the match you want to talk about, Mario?
Easily, we have to figure out who our main penalty taker is. Just from what Spalletti was letting us know via the media, he's saying his method of doing things is he lets the players decide first for the first penalty kick, and the second one he'll decide. I do not agree with that whatsoever. I feel like that'll ruin team chemistry, not improve it, unless the players themselves for sure know exactly what is going on every match, which I think is impossible unless you are the coach yourself. I think that's a coach's job. I don't think the players should have that on their backs. And to get into that, the first thing I want to say is Politano should not be taking penalties. I could think of 3 players already just off the top of my head: Osimhen, Cavada, and Elmas. Just off Elmas's last shot right there, that just shows me he's way more confident in taking penalties. I don't care if he's younger or he hasn't taken as many. He just seemed way more confident. And that's what I think is a main key with penalties: is mentality and confidence.
And the predictability, too, with Politano.
Yeah.
You know exactly where the dude's going to go.
He's got one leg.
He's got one leg, but is he going to try to go left with his left leg? I don't think so. The goalie knows where to go every single time. That shot he took was weak. The goalie did get a little bit of a hand on it, but it was weak in its first place. I don't understand why Politano ended up taking that penalty kick. I really think that Spalletti, like my boy said, needs to take control of who is the penalty kick taker. It's like a fucking merry-go-round. Figure it out. I don't want this to be something that has an influence on any games the rest of the way. He needs to figure that out. Spalletti's been great this year. He's rarely made any mistakes. He didn't have a good game when Lecce came to the Maradona. That wasn't a very smart thing to do by switching out half of the team. So he's made his mistakes, man, but he's been a great coach this year. And I think that the other thing he needs to do is figure out this penalty kicker situation.
Easily.
If Cavada's on the field, Cavada's got to be the dude. The dude can go anywhere in the net. He can go top corner. He can go any side. He's always going to have a powerful shot. And you can tell that he's calm, cool, and collected when he steps up. I know he's only had one shot, but that shot was crazy. It was perfect. It's exactly where it needed to be. So I agree with you, Mario. Spalletti, you need to figure out the penalty kicker situation for sure. What do you guys think?
For me, I personally think you guys are being a little harsh on Politano. I mean, I don't. Yeah, he may not be great, but I think he scored 3. This was his first miss in 4 attempts. I thought it was a. Yeah, you're probably going to refer to the one in preseason that he missed, but
No, I'm gonna refer to the one that went underneath the goalie against Milan.
oh right, yeah. So
That was
got a
straight
little bit
luck that
lucky.
the goalie didn't get it, you know? That
Yeah,
was just another example of how his penalty kicks, they're just too weak.
yeah.
Predictable.
They're predictable and too weak, man.
Okay, that's fair enough. I do agree that Spalletti needs to have, the pick determined before the match based on his starting 11. Obviously, if Zielinski's starting, maybe he takes it. I also agree that Cavada should probably be the guy. I think, Dom, you did a video on this, comparing the form of Cavada taking a penalty kick to Osimhen's, and that's why I would rule Osimhen out, because his form on the penalty kick is really unorthodox, I guess you can say, and it's probably because of his build, right? Cavada has perfect form taking them, so I do agree on that. As far as the match goes, a couple of points. You guys mentioned the build-up play, the team play. It was also that same team play that led to the first penalty kick. I think it was 8 passes as well, where classic Spalletti ball building out of the back and working up the field, and then also the play that Osimhen made to win the red card, I think, is just another example of how valuable this guy is. Even, I mean, he scored in this match, but there are games where he doesn't score, but he does things like this, where this was just basically a long ball played forward because we had nothing available. We were kind of pinned in our own end. He wins the ball, beats Neutink, and then because of that ridiculous pace of his, draws that foul and gets the red card. So just Osimhen is, just a fantastic player, which we all know. But again, the value that he brings to this team is just unreal.
Yeah, I'd just like to piggyback on Joe. I think if we also take a look back at Inter, and one of the reasons why we maybe didn't do so well against Inter is because we weren't able to involve Osimhen as much, right? But then we see in the Sampdoria game what happens to a game when all of a sudden Victor comes into the midfield to collect the balls. When he gets a chance to run at defenders, it's absolute chaos for the other team. And sometimes, he still needs to improve. But I would say this season, most times, whenever he's on the ball, he's dangerous and things happen. So I think the biggest takeaway from these 2 games is get Victor involved in the play. Victor himself needs to get himself involved. If he's seeing that maybe the defenders have gotten caged up, come back to the midfield, get involved with distributing the ball, and then make a run into the box like we saw with the goal that he scored when Mario Rui was able to pick him out. He had such a pace differential with the other defenders. They weren't sure how to mark him for that cross. And then about the penalties thing, 100%. We need a new penalty taker because Politano doesn't have the quality. But regardless, even if Politano did have the quality, I'm much more of a fan of having one single penalty taker at every single game, in the sense that it should be some guy that's always starting. So imagine Politano was a great penalty taker. The fact that he only starts 50% of the game, for me, that doesn't sit right. I like to know who the team's penalty taker is and be certain that if we have a penalty, it's going to be that guy and not something that changes and flops around. So I think we need to look at people that are regular starters.
Just a comment on
Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Osimhen. I think that's the challenge for Spalletti with Juve ahead, because one thing that surprised me about the Sampdoria match was just how open it was from the very beginning, and maybe that's because of the lack of quality in the Sampdoria squad. But when you give us that much space, that's where Napoli is really going to beat you, whether it's passing through the middle or playing those long balls over the top to Osimhen or Cavada or Politano or Lozano. They're all quick, right? Whereas in the Inter match, they took that space away, and we all seen how Juventus have played this season. We know that they're going to set up to defend and probably look a lot like Inter did. So again, curious to see how now Spalletti counters that to try to involve Osimhen more.
Yeah, I think we'll need to have Juve come at us a bit more, which means maybe Osimhen needs to come back to the midfield, try to drag some of their defenders towards the halfway line and then maybe launch them when they least expect it. But if Victor just stays still and plays exactly where the Juve line wants him to play, which is in between them or next to them, then it's going to be difficult. But if he can move around during the game and not give them a focal point, then I think we could do something with that.
Yeah, and that can also free up Cavada, right? So if Victor drops to receive the ball, the defender follows him, and then Cavada makes the run in behind.
Exactly. Yeah. Or Lozano. I could see Lozano do well in that game, actually.
With the pace, yes.
I hope so. We need Lozano to do a little bit more, man. I've been a pretty vast supporter of Lozano more often than not, but I'm starting to really feel like he needs to give us more. It's not like it's because his quality is great. It's just because of the things that he can do to put pressure on the defense, the fouls he can cause, the havoc that he can cause with his speed. If he gets the ball advanced up close to the box, he's got really good crosses low to the ground that people can find. So yeah, I think he's going to be important for this game. But we forgot to mention our man of the match and our flop of the match for the Samp game. For me, I think the man of the match, I don't know how you can't go without saying it's Victor Osimhen just because of the goal he had. He drew a foul that caused a red card, even though Napoli didn't really do a whole lot in the second half after them being down a man. That was a very good aggressive play that he had to draw that foul. So he's definitely my man of the match. And if I had to pick a flop of the match, who the hell you think I'm going to pick? Fucking Politano, man. Politano, one move, one trick pony, whatever. He choked the penalty kick. It wasn't a strong kick. And I do think that he had something to do with the confusion of who was really supposed to take the penalty kick. I mean, I really don't think it was supposed to be him. And just because he's been the guy that's taken it, that's not the way that Spalletti is really operating it. So why did it end up being him? I mean, he's got to know himself that there's other dudes on that field that have more quality than him to shoot that penalty kick. And that was a huge game for Napoli. Like him missing that penalty kick, that could have backfired. I'm glad it didn't. They responded the right way, but it could have turned out really, really bad. So he's absolutely my flop of the match. Who you got for?
Honestly, you took it right out of my mouth for flop of the match, just because I feel like he didn't ruin our momentum at all, because obviously we responded fantastically. And that's what I think is the biggest difference with the Napoli team is our mentality is above and beyond what we're used to. So, I mean, man of the match, you already picked Osimhen, so I would honestly pick Elmas. He showed maturity this match, just taking that penalty, and also Osimhen allowing him to take the penalty. I mean, you saw him cheering him on live at the stadium. That was great to see. That's why I love Osimhen as well. Even when he's not that guy that match, he always makes certain that he amps our whole team up. And him being our workhorse, it's a blessing to have this guy.
Yep. What you guys think, Dom, Joe? Who did you think made the most impact for Napoli in that match, and who should have been sitting on the bench?
No, I 100% agree. Osimhen was a monster in that game. Great performance. Flop of the match, definitely. Thing is, it's hard to say Politano's a flop of a match, actually, because after that he recovered well as well. It's not like he had a bad performance after that. He did a few defensive recoveries, was active in the final third, didn't pick out a great pass. I think we're missing that in the last two games from the wide areas, like you guys mentioned. But I mean, the work rate was there. So I don't think anybody flopped apart from Politano's penalty. There was a flop moment from Politano, but I don't think his overall performance was bad. I think it was just average. In fact, I gave him a 6 out of 10. So, yeah.
All right.
I'm going to throw out a name there that pains me to say for flop of the match, and definitely not a player that I would bench for the next match. But just to mix it up a little bit, I'm going to say Di Lorenzo, because 3 of Sampdoria's 6 chances or whatever they had in the first half came directly as a result of Di Lorenzo losing the ball. There was one where I think he just had his pocket picked, and the Sam Lammers chance at the first post that he missed the net, and then it wasn't even caught on the broadcast, but you guys might have saw it live in the stadium. But right from the goal kick, Di Lorenzo lost the ball again, and I think Gabbiadini had a shot that wasn't very good, and it bounced wide of the mark. And then later, I think it was about around the half-hour mark, he tried to play a pass for Anguissa in the middle of the park, but it was a very dangerous ball to play. And I think Augello intercepted that pass, and again, Gabbiadini missed the target. So again, I say it pains me because Di Lorenzo is one of my favorite players on this team, and I almost feel ashamed to to criticize him. But I think he had a rough first half, and then obviously after the red card, it was pretty smooth sailing from there. I completely agree on Osimhen, and one thing that's been great to watch as a fan, I'm sure you guys will agree, is how he's evolving to become one of the leaders on this squad. And you mentioned, handing the ball to Elmas and the way he supports his teammates and celebrates other players' goals and celebrates victories. I think he's really becoming a really important leader of not just in terms of how he plays on the pitch, but also in the locker room.
Oh, yeah, and you talking about that right now about his leadership. The last time I went to the training center just to watch some of the practicing, the one thing that I noticed right from the get-go was how boisterous he was on the practice field. I mean, I've been to several of the practices in years past, and I don't ever remember any player ever being as boisterous as he was that day when I was at practice. I mean, maybe he was more boisterous than he normally is, but I really love to see that. And you're spot on, Joe, about his leadership. I mean, is he even blown up this year? Remember at the beginning of the year how everybody was concerned that he was going to get a red card here and a red card there, and he was going to get kicked out of this game and that game. And I don't think he's blown up even once this year, has he? He's had his moments where he could, but he hasn't blown up, right, Mario?
Yeah, I feel like I would have caught that because he did it so
Yeah.
often last year. Yeah.
Was
I
it
haven't seen it.
was it this season in summer training when Spalletti threw him out of training? Yeah,
I think it
so
was this season. Yeah.
yeah, so
Mhm.
I wonder
yeah.
if that had any impact, or
Impact.
personally, I thought that was more of like, it almost felt like that was planned, like that was just sort of a coaching moment for Spalletti. Let me throw this guy out to teach the other guys something. But yeah, I can't think of any sort of tirades or things like last season where he got himself sent off for dissent.
He
And I
better not
think
have a
that's down
tirade
to-
Friday night.
Yeah, and I think that's down to a lot of the older players leaving over the summer. Some of these younger guys, they want to be superstars, and for you to fill those boots of Mertens and Insigne, you've got to step it up on the field, but in the locker room as well.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. We missed that locker room presence that we really needed, and since Hamsik left, to be honest, in my opinion. So I mean, talking about his leadership, and I think that it's going to be hugely important for this next game on Friday the 13th. The Friday the 13th, the way I say that's not because I think that's bad for Napoli. That's bad for Juve, just so you know. It's their Friday the 13th, and it's just another game for us. So let's get into that match. Man, this is going to be a huge match, fellas, and I think this is a huge opportunity for Napoli to really put their foot down on Serie A and just really show everybody what they're made of, especially after losing to Inter, coming right back and beating Sam. It is so important for them not only to win this match, but I think to dominate the match. And I mean, for me, I think Spalletti's got a challenge here figuring out who he's going to put out there on the field. I think it's going to be really, really hard for him not to at least consider Raspadori and Elmas. And then I think he has a decision to make to Rachmani too. I mean, Rachmani came in the second half and subbed out Kim, which I think had a combination to do with him having some muscle stuff going on. But I think maybe his accumulation of yellow cards might have helped him make that decision a little bit, because we really don't want him to miss any of these next future matches. We got Roma coming up pretty soon, so that might have been part of it too. And then, the right wing is always going to be something that Spalletti's got to figure out. I mean, does he just flip a coin when he's picking who the right wing is going to be? I mean, I wish he had 2 Lozano coins. I would much rather see Lozano in this match than Politano. but I'm already emotionally and mentally prepared for that number 21 to walk out on the pitch and be hopping on his right foot because his left foot's the only one he uses. You know, so we'll see who's going to start at right wing. And, I'm very confident in this match overall. I really am. I think Juve is still a good team, but they're not the Juve of past. I know they've only allowed something like 7 goals all year, which is crazy to think about because they haven't been really good all year. They've just had a recent run of good form. So that's insane to think that. And then for the match, I think it's extremely important for Napoli to come out super aggressive. I can't remember who it was, Dom or Joe. One of you mentioned that you would really like to see Juve be aggressive so that we can, I think, play the counter. I want to see Napoli come out aggressive. If it's using the counter to do that, or if it's just taking the ball down the field, no matter what defense they have set up, I want them to force the issue. I don't want them to, just wait for Juve maybe to make a mistake or try to feel out Juve and what they're doing. No, take it to them. And then, in my opinion, our overall roster right now, with everybody that's available to play, the quality is much better than Juve. So all these things put together, along with the fact that that stadium is going to be rocking, I am super confident in this game. And when we get done here, I'll go over what my prediction is, but I'm going to pass it over to Mario and see what he thinks about this match.
Yeah, I think for our formation, we're going to start with the regular 4-3-3. I don't see Spalletti changing things up at all. Not for a team like Juventus, who's been so consistent as of lately. Their defense is stout. That's everybody knows this, but there's always a question mark on their offense if they're even willing to score more than 1 goal a match. We are a big team this season, and our pressure, I feel like, has let off after the Inter loss, while Juve are playing on a current win streak of what, 7 wins in a row?
I think it's 8, maybe even 9. What is it, fellas? Is it 8 or 9? What is it?
8.
It's 8 wins in a row. So, them coming into a lit Napoli stadium should put a lot of pressure on them, even though Juve tends to manage pressure quite well. I still see them struggling to get even just more than one, but I feel like they would be happy with 1 goal. And that's where Napoli needs to really capitalize and just push, man. Just push and attack. Got to be aggressive.
Yeah, if I may add how I think the game's going to go down. By looking at Juve's recent form, they've been scoring a lot of goals in the final few minutes of the game. So I can totally see a very attacking Napoli for the first 70, 75 minutes. And then I think in the last 10, 15, he might make some substitutions to bulk up the midfield. And I think he's going to start with Lozano on the right. And then he's going to sub Politano on in the second half because Politano does have a better tracking back than Lozano. And I think that's going to be critical to not allow Chiesa any sort of opportunities in the final 10, 15 minutes. We saw it against Cremonese and against Udinese. Chiesa in the last 10 minutes woke up, was left completely unmarked in both occasions, and created havoc for the opponents. So I think we need to make sure that Chiesa doesn't get a sniff of the ball, especially in the second half, and that's where Politano might be useful. Not so much going forward, but tracking back, helping Di Lorenzo out. But yeah, I hope in the first half and the first 70 minutes, we go out there and we attack Juve and hopefully get a 2-3 goal lead, and then we don't even have to worry about Chiesa, right, in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think if you had to pick a similar start that you would want, it's that Liverpool match, the first leg in the Champions League, right, where Napoli just burst out of the gate and just scored goal after goal, and could have scored even more goals had we been more clinical. I think Juventus is definitely going to drop back, and like their primary objective at the start of the match is going to be to just take the crowd out of it, because then, as you said, that place is going to be jam packed. It's going to be rocking, so they're going to want to just kill that energy, and that's the way they play anyways. Like Dom said, for the first 75, 80 minutes before they start pushing forward. One of the, I talked about the defending being a little bit weak in the Sampdoria match and the Inter match, or at least not as solid as we have been earlier in the season. The other criticism I had from the Sampdoria match was that we weren't as clinical as we have been before the break either. I thought we created a lot of chances, but it took us until the 82nd minute to get our second goal when we got the second penalty kick. So that'll be very important. Obviously, given Juve's defensive record this season, we need to be able to take our chances, and I'm not expecting us to get as many because of how defensive they play. So I think when those opportunities present themselves, we have to take them. And if we can get 1-2 goals, then that'll make it a lot more difficult for Juve to try to steal the game at the very end. Or what'll happen is they'll be forced to play more expansive football because they're trailing. And then that, we talked about how do we create space against Juventus. One way is to score a goal, right? Because now they have to move forward, and that creates more space on the pitch, which actually plays into our strengths.
Dom, how do you think Kvara is going to be in this game? Do you think he's going to get close to being the Kvara that we know? Is he going to impact the game like we need him to? And do you think that is required for us to be dominant in the match? Not so much if he doesn't, we could lose, but to dominate Juve, do you think Kvara has to have one of his better games of the year and be more of himself?
Well, I think Kvara's on the rise in the sense that he played much better against Sampdoria than he did against Inter. So that's positive news for us. I think as the days go on, he should be recovering more and more his form. And he was injured back in late November, and he should be recovering more and more from that as well. If he can come on and in the first 10, 15 minutes, get past a few Juventus players, show them that he might possibly be back, I think it'll be a huge psychological boost for us and a blow for Juventus, because they'll be thinking, wow, we have to deal with this guy for another 80 minutes. So I think it's important to get him on the ball early in the game and for him to do something good with the ball. If he doesn't, then yeah, definitely it's going to affect us. It's one less option that we have, if he's not being clinical. But at the end of the day, even Kvara at 60-70% of his best, he's still a dangerous player. Yeah, I don't think it's critical that he is at 100%. I think we can still get away with him at a 60-70, but if he can do something well in the first 10 minutes, I think then it's downhill for us there.
Joe, what do you feel about the midfield? Do you think that there's a specific player that needs to have one of his better matches of the year in the midfield to control that area of the pitch, to be able to dominate Juve? Like I said, we're going to beat Juve, but I want to kick their fucking ass. I want to kick their fucking ass. So in the midfield, who needs to have that game?
So first of all, let me say that my predicted midfield is going to be Lobotka and Gisa and Zielinski. I think we're going to go back to that trio. I know Elmas has looked good in the last couple of games, but Sampdoria obviously not great, especially down to man. Inter,
he came Elmas, bro.
I like him, but I personally think that he was especially good in the Inter match because he was coming off the bench. Like when we've started out, I mean, he seems to score every time we do start him, so it's hard to criticize him there. But I just feel like in terms of chemistry, and Gisa, Zielinski, and Lobotka is the best that we have. But what that means is, to answer your question, Dan, is we really need to see a better performance from Zielinski than we saw against Inter, because and you could probably say the same thing for Anguissa, because that midfield trio was almost non-existent. They were smothered by Inter. So if that's who we start in the midfield, then I definitely want to see those guys have a better match. And I'd also like to see Spalletti be a bit quicker with his substitutions if they're struggling. Like we have a guy like Raspadori who can change your shape. If that 4-3-3 and with Zielinski's not working, take Zielinski out, put Raspadori in, switch to a 4-2-3-1, change your look. He's got different characteristics. You could even, if Kvara really is struggling, if this sort of moment of being out of form continues, that's another option to play Raspadori on the left for Kvara, just again to change things up. And Raspadori's shown that, when he's on, he creates chances. He seems pretty cold-blooded to me. Like he does not seem to be fazed by the pressure. So I think Spalletti needs to use the weapons that he has at his disposal, regardless of who he starts.
Do you feel like Lobotka has gotten rid of all of his panettone weights?
I think so. Yeah.
You sure about that? Is he as quick as he was before Christmas? Or like before the winter break?
I mean, when you don't play for almost 2 months, right? It's
Mm.
gonna take a little bit to get back to shape, I guess. But I don't necessarily have a problem with the way Lobotka's playing. I mean, I don't know if you guys think differently.
I also just want to defend him a little bit and say that in the Sampdoria game, it was raining heavily. And for someone like him, that he needs to control the tempo of the game, I think it's really difficult conditions to do that in. So maybe not the best game to judge Lobotka. And then against Inter, I think just the whole team in general wasn't doing well. So hopefully on Friday, hopefully good weather, team will be slightly fitter, slightly more up for it, and he should do better.
And we don't really have a great alternative for Lobotka anyway, so I think we got to go with him and hope he's at his best.
Dom, you're making me check the weather. Hold on a sec, man.
I think it should be raining whenever we get there.
Yeah, it's not a lot of rain though. There's some rain in the forecast, but it's low percentage.
It was
So
chucking it down in Genoa, no? On that day,
say that again.
it was chucking it down with rain.
Oh yeah,
in,
yeah, it was pouring.
Yeah.
It was pouring, man. Okay.
Real quick, before
yeah.
we move on from the Juventus match, I want to ask both of you, what do you feel like is the most important thing? Because me personally, I feel like Di Lorenzo has to show up here against Chiesa. I mean, in my opinion, I feel like he's the best Juventus player. Even though he might not be in complete form, I still feel like, he's Italy's best player. So he's got to be Juve's, right? What do you guys think is the main takeaway from this match that will really kind of bump us up compared to Juventus?
I'm gonna go with the fans. The fans need to back the team up. They need to put pressure on the ref. They need to make it tough for Juve. And I think they're gonna be the 12th man on the field. And I'm sure they are. It's not about it's you guys. And it's not an if. It's not they should.
We'll handle that shit, man.
No, they will.
Yeah.
It's gonna be we're gonna have an extra player on the field. That's gonna be the key in that game. But it's going to be 12 against 12, maybe. You don't know what the refs.
Yeah, for me, I think.
I was telling my boy in the car, coming back from the store earlier today. If there's one thing that I could actually have some concern over, and that could affect the game, it's always the refs in these games, man. So. I'm not saying that I think that's going to happen, but I am saying that is always in the back of my mind. And whether the ref makes a bad call on purpose or not, it's Juve just seems to have the refs in their back pocket for whatever reason more often than not. But I think this is a different year still. I really do. I think with VAR being in effect for these many years, it's harder for the refs to make these mistakes and not really have to answer to them because the VAR shows us all on the screen afterwards for most of the plays that are super important.
They start getting it wrong sometimes.
I mean, VAR's not perfect.
Yeah.
Calls still get screwed up. A ref might not even ask to look at the screen, but I think it's a lot harder than it was for years past. So I'm not really worried about the refs, but Dom, no doubt, man, it's in the back of my mind for sure. All right, man, let's move on to the next thing.
And Joe, what did you also think for the takeaway of the match? The most important thing?
Yeah, for me, I think I want to see these players just rise to the occasion. I think as fans, too often we've been sort of disappointed with whether it was the approach of being too conservative or the lack of effort or just players buckling under the pressure. And as much as we love guys like Koulibaly and Insigne and Mertens, those guys had huge burdens on their shoulders. They had a lot of scar tissue. We now have a squad of young players like Osimhen, like Cavada, like Kim, who are all eager to prove themselves. Maybe the pressure is starting to build on them with this start that we've had to the season, but so far they've been almost carefree. Like the mentality issue doesn't seem to be the same with these guys as it was with the previous generation. So what I really want to see is just these players and Spalletti rise to this occasion and take matters into their own hand, play more physically, be the more physical side, which is another reason why I want to see Mario Rui in the starting 11, because if they're going to play Cavada physically like Inter did, I'd like to have him in the squad just to provide a little bit of protection and get into the face of other players or the ref or whatever it is. So, yeah, for me, it's just to see all of them rise to the occasion.
It'd be nice to see Osimhen score against Juve. We're still missing clips of him scoring against Juve. And I think to be a legendary striker for Napoli, which I'm sure he will, you need a few goals against the Zebras, man. They got to come up in the compilations.
I agree.
So that brings up the prediction for the match. I almost forgot about that. I know, Joe, I know you're okay with predictions because you do it on your pod. Dom, are you okay with predictions, my man? Yeah, okay, just checking before we go there. So, Joe, what do you feel like the match is going to end? What do you think the scoreline is going to be, and who's going to score the goals?
Yeah, so just like I said, I think we need the players to step up to the occasion. I think we as a fan base also need to step up and stop being so scared to make predictions. And so for me, I'm picking a Napoli win, and I don't necessarily think it'll be easy. I don't think I'm jinxing it. I don't think I'm mushing it just because I'm predicting it. We are the favorites. You have a lot of injuries. We're top of the table. We're there for a reason. So I'm picking a Napoli win, but I think it'll be a narrow win. I think it'll be a 1-0 victory, and Dom wanted an Osimhen goal, and that's who I think is going to score the goal for us.
Okay, Dom, what you got, man?
I'm going to go with a 2-1 with Osimhen and Kim on a corner. And then I'm going to go with a Juve goal at the end with 5 minutes to go and us at the edge of our seats for 5 minutes, because that's just typical Napoli, right? They can't let us win easy. We gotta risk our hearts a little bit.
Dom, I'm 49 years old, brother. I'm going to be there. You trying to get me to have a heart attack, dude? Oh, Mario, what you got?
I also agree with Dom. I think it's going to be a 2-1 scoreline. I also have Osimhen scoring. However, I kind of have a little wild card. I feel like Mario Rui is going to get our first goal with Napoli here. I don't know. I have a weird feeling about it, man. Especially if he starts. I feel like he's going to be the guy this game that really changes our mood, I guess you can say. Obviously we do have Osimhen who does that himself, but this game we need some catisma. Okay, so we need Mario Rui in there for sure. And then for Juventus, I just have, I have Mili scoring a goal. We have a history of allowing our ex-players just to score goals. I think it'll be a super lucky goal, nothing special, maybe like a little tap in, but I think he gets one here.
This ain't Higuain, man.
I know.
I almost hate Mili more than Higuain.
Do you think he's going to celebrate like Higuain did if he scores?
Honestly, I wouldn't doubt it. He seems like that kind of character.
Man, they better have security near me if he celebrates, man. I'm serious. I will jump off the upper deck onto the field to kick that dude's ass.
I believe it, dude.
If that dude freaking celebrates, man, I know where the players leave to go home at night. All right, so I'm a little bit more optimistic. Napoli gonna dominate these dudes. And Victor Osimhen's going to have a brace, and he's going to take that next step to being the legend that Dom mentions that he needs to be, which I think he's going to get there like Dom says, but I think it really starts Friday night. And Mario took it from me, but it's okay. Mario Rui is going to get a goal, fellas. He's due for it, and the stadium wants him to score. I don't know how it's going to happen, man.
The stadium would collapse if Mario Rui scores.
It would, man. And I'm going to be in there when it collapses, man. So maybe I need to go get my wills updated and shit, because you're right. I mean, I can't imagine another moment being in that stadium that people would cheer more for if Mario Rui actually scores. So
why doesn't he take the penalties? Come on.
You were talking about that too.
No, he's got probably the best foot out of anybody in terms of like placing a ball. Think about it. His crosses are incredible.
Yeah, Yeah, that's fair.
But
Dude,
anyway,
Dom,
that's a
man.
close
But
conversation.
his shot, dude, Dom, Mario Rui's shots are like field goal kicks. He thinks he's kicking through the uprights in the NFL and not kicking a goal in Serie A, man. I mean, but I think with the penalty kick, he would be fine. I
I
don't
don't
know
know,
how he's
as a
going to get the.
defender, it's something. There's just something different about when you're placing a pass on a player's foot or a player's head versus into the corner of a goal. Once you put that frame there, it just psychologically, it's totally
Yeah.
different.
All right. Anything else you guys want to mention about this Friday the 13th nightmare match for Juventus?
No, I think we covered everything. I think either
Okay.
way, guys, this team is gonna make us have fun this year. So I'm excited for the game, excited for the remaining games.
Yeah, one thing I would add is if we do happen to drop points, none of us are expecting it. We all predicted wins. There is a long season to go. We've seen teams dropping points to all kinds of clubs, mid-table, top table, bottom of the table. There's still a lot of work to do, but obviously, if we get a win here, we're 10 points clear of Juve, still 7 points clear of Milan, assuming they win. And same thing, Inter is what, 8, 10? I think it's 10. So, yeah, big game if we win, but not necessarily the end of the world if we don't win.
I think I can agree with that. All right, let's get on to the next topic. We are getting, it's like an hour almost. There's only a few more things that I wanted to cover. And so one of the things that, I don't like seeing, but it's just part of, calcio in Italy is the ultras going at each other. And we've all, seen the tweets and we've read things online with different sources of what happened on the Autostrada on the way to the game, Napoli on its way to Genova, and Roma on its way to Milan. Um, Before we started getting ready for this recording, I did see some reports that maybe there was something going on there where it was like planned for them to do that. I don't know if those are reputable reports. I don't know that, but what I do know is both the Gazzetta dello Sport and the Corriere dello Sport, they reported that it did start with Napoli Ultras throwing things into the A1, like the freeway there where the public is, and I'm for me, it's definitely not something that we need to take lightly. It's not a joking matter because this was in an open area where anybody could have got hurt, women, children, what have you, and they need to address this type of violence. I haven't seen anything about any, real bad injuries or anything, but that could have happened, and it could have been a bystander that got hurt too. I haven't noticed anything. Maybe you guys have about a possible suspension of fans going to any of the games, not being allowed to come to. Hopefully, not this game coming up on Friday. But maybe one of the games in the future, maybe something will happen with the Roma Napoli match or the Napoli Roma match when they come to the Maradona. What do you
I
guys feel
I
about?
heard that there might be some restrictions put on Napoli and Roma fans for away games.
Okay, well, how do you guys feel about this in general, and how Serie A and just the government in Italy is handling the violence between the ultras, especially when it involves the public or could indirectly involve the public like this could have.
Yeah, obviously there's no place for this in sport, in society. Football should be a way for people to go on out on a Sunday and have fun and hopefully bring your family. I think that's what makes it such a nice activity. And yeah, I mean the government, the police force, I think they could do much more because I don't believe that these things are not planned. I do think that a lot of the time there is some sort of planning that goes into this, and it should be feasible for the police force or the government to intercept these kind of things and avoid it from happening. For example, in this case, I think it was that the Roma and Napoli fans happened to be at the same spot at the same time, but there was also they were escorted by the police, if I understood correctly. Like they were fans that had been escorted by the police. So why is the police bringing Roma and Napoli fans in the same spot to take a break on the highway? That's just stupid. So yeah, they definitely could do better. But unfortunately, guys, unless they do something very strict, then it's not gonna stop the problem. So I'm hoping, even though this is gonna hurt us, I'm hoping they give a hefty fine or penalty to the people involved. It might mean no ultras at some away games, but man, this has got to stop. They got to do something harsh on these guys.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this behavior is unacceptable, whether it's in the stadium, outside the stadium, wherever it might be happening. I also agree that the punishment has to be specific to the individuals involved, because even just closing sections of stadiums, I don't have a lot of confidence that that's going to fix the problem, right? I mean, and it also, it's unfortunate for those who are not involved. Like, these are a pretty significant minority of fans. Yes, they tend to be the loudest, they tend to be the ones that travel the most, but there are a lot of traveling fans that'll go to matches. Like that Inter game, Dan, you said the visitor section was still pretty much sold out, even though residents of Campania were not permitted to attend the match. So they're also kind of spoiling it for everyone else. But if the punishment is just close the whole section, then the individuals are not facing any repercussions. And to Dom's point, that's where the police need to enforce the law and charge them based on the crimes that were committed or the offenses that were committed accordingly. A similar thing goes for with racist chants in stadiums. If you just close sections of stadiums, you're not going to stop the problem. You need to be able to identify the people who are doing these things, and you ban a couple people for life, and people are going to start thinking twice about whether they do the same thing, right? So I think there's a lot there. And then I also think the league, I think De Laurentiis commented on it, but the league and the clubs, they have a tendency to respond to these things with like press releases, and I feel like that's not enough either. I think they intentionally stay a little bit too quiet on these matters, and maybe they need to get more involved. I mean, this used to be a huge issue in England, and they figured out a way to stop it from happening. Now, English stadiums are maybe not as loud as Italian ones are, but they don't have this problem anymore. And it's for marketing reasons, but they're now the biggest league in the world. So
UEFA banned English clubs for 5-6 years. So that was a huge sort of punishment that they put on English clubs. I hope they don't do as something like that, where they just punish everybody and take away the fun for everybody. As Joe said, it needs to be specific to those people. The technology to identify them is there. The club and the state know who these guys are. They're the troublemakers. They know who they are.
Yeah.
So,
And like you said, Dom, the fact that when these ultras do go on these road trips, they're escorted by the polizia. I've seen that several times. I don't know if it's normal practice, if they always do that, but I have seen that several times. And if they were at all involved in not doing their job and actually letting this escalate to what it got, I mean, you've seen the videos. It wasn't just a couple dudes going at each other. It was the entire group of both of them.
do we
So
know
yeah, I
for
agree
sure
with
that it was that the police led them both to the same place? It just seems unusual to me that, rival ultras, like hundreds of them on either side, would meet up at the same place, and they all happen to have weapons on them at the same time. I mean, the vibe that I got, and I mean, you guys are closer to the Italian news than I am here in Canada, but it
I mean,
felt really premeditated to me.
I do think that it's quite possible that they ended up passing by one another on the autostrada, because when the ultras go to games, it's not just one bus. It's a convoy of buses, and they stand out, especially if they've got any polizia that are, escorting them. So for me, it's not out of this world to think that it wasn't really a planned thing and it just happened because they ran into each other. I mean, the report said that objects were thrown onto the autostrada at some of the buses that were coming by. So, I mean, maybe they saw them and they knew that they were ahead of them and they stopped at the auto grill and they're like, yeah, they're coming. Let's throw some shit at them. You know what I mean? So, I mean, we won't ever know exactly how everything went down, but
I mean,
for sure, something has to be done, especially when it's at locations where bystanders can get hurt.
yeah. I mean,
I
there's
mean, if you
definitely
want
some
to,
level of planning, because otherwise, like, you wouldn't be able to react that quick if a bus is just going through the highway at like 60, 80. How do you react? Like, you can't see them from a mile away. The bus would just pass in a second. So there was some sort of planning where either the two groups of buses stopped at the same place, or the group that was stopped knew exactly when that bus was coming, or the fact that it was going to come at a specific time. So some level of planning from at least one of the groups was there, 100%.
gotcha.
Real quick to add on to that as well, I feel like American sports does this best when they pickpocket certain people that are causing these problems at stadiums or even outside of them. And I hate to mention cancel culture, but Twitter is best at getting these people and specifically seeing who it is. And we do have all the technology to really find out who's doing what. So I really feel like it's just laziness from the Italian side of things. I feel like they don't really want to do the work to find these people. I've seen so many different posts of faces and people specifically who have gotten banned from stadiums for racist chants, for derogatory things they've said. And I feel like we should do the same.
Okay. All right. Anything to add on to that, Dom or Joe? Anything at all? No? Okay. I think we've talked about that enough. Yeah, I mean, I hope it doesn't happen again at all the rest of the season because I just we're lucky that somebody didn't actually get hurt, some bystander. And hopefully whatever punishment does come out, like you guys had mentioned, is gonna at least make these ultras think twice about what they're doing. So the transfer rumors. So we did get, a backup to D'Lo. We haven't really seen him in action yet. He's practiced just a couple times. And I saw your video, Dom, about him just analyzing what he could be for us and how similar he is with his statistics with D'Lo. Do you feel like he's gonna actually make any kind of impact in the rest of the I mean, for the rest of the season? Or is it gonna be an 85th minute sub for D'Lo just to give him a little bit of rest? What do you guys think about that signing?
No, I don't think he's gonna come on in the 85th minute to give Di Lorenzo a rest. It's more about if Di Lorenzo picks up too many yellow cards, which is not usually the case, and he misses a game, or if Di Lorenzo gets injured and he misses 2-3 games, that's where then he will go and play. It's maybe a bit in the Coppa Italia, but it's not a player that it's like, oh, let's put him on for 10-15 minutes to give Di Lorenzo doesn't need to rest. He's a workhorse. So it's more just in case he gets injured. I'd much rather have Berenzinski on the field, a guy with experience, than Zanoli, who I think has potential, but he cost us last season. He cost us points in the 3-4 games that he played. A few goals were down to him. I hate to say it, but it's just the truth. And I saw him on preseason as well. He made a really bad mistake in preseason with a cross coming in and cleared it the wrong side. And Spalletti didn't play him at all this season. I think he saw that mistake and was like, I can't trust this guy. And he was the
You
first to
think
go.
that
So, yeah.
you don't think that maybe so like with D'Lo's injury last year, you don't think that maybe it's just too many minutes for him and he got burnt out and that had something to do with him getting hurt? You don't think that there's a
Joe, do you
chance
want
that
to?
Yeah, I mean, I think he can give Di Lorenzo the occasional break, but to Dom's point, it'll be maybe a Coppa Italia match, maybe this one coming up, or if we have Serie A, Champions League Serie A, maybe you play him against a weaker Serie A opponent, something like that. And I think it's to Dom's point, it's a bit of an insurance policy. It's a guy that they obviously feel like they can trust more than Zanoli. And then the flip side is this is also a move to get Zanoli some playing minutes for his development, right? So it's kind of like, okay, we're bringing in an experienced guy that we're a bit more confident in being the backup, while also not letting Zanoli rot on the bench here. Let's send them out to, a bottom of the table team where they're not going to be so scared to play him. I mean, what do they have to lose? He can learn a lot there. He can get a lot more playing time, and then hopefully he comes back an improved player.
Well, I hear you. Murray, you got anything to say about?
I feel like he was a great pickup. Just to cut it short, really, I just feel like he's there for experience. Like you guys mentioned, Zanoli has potential. He did cost us a couple games last season. I feel like Spalletti did the right thing by letting him develop himself at a low table team like Sampdoria, who are willing to start someone of his caliber.
He played already in the last match.
Yeah,
too.
he already
got in
started
the
against
game.
us, for example, right? Did he start or did he
I think he subbed in. He didn't
He
start.
came off the
He- but-
bench, yeah.
came off
Yeah.
the bench? Okay, well that's still something for him, because he can't even really do that with us. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a great pickup in my opinion, but for him to come in at the 85th minute, no, I don't think so either. I trust Dilo's legs. Sure, he may look rusty these last couple games, but he'll get back in form quickly.
And then there's rumors about another player that's been pretty much in every transfer market rumor tweet about Napoli lately with that dude from Morocco that had a really good World Cup, the midfielder, last name Nuai. I think I'm saying it right. Do you think that there's a chance we get him in January, or is that more of a summer signing?
I think Napoli are hoping to buy him now and keep him at Angers until June, and that hopefully will convince that club to accept that deal, because I think other clubs that are interested in him want to buy him and take him away now. But I think the French club might want to keep him for a few more months just to ensure they finish the season a bit strong. I think he's a great addition to the team if he comes. He's young. He's got an experience in the World Cup semifinal. So yeah, clearly the
Do you
talent's
think-
there, and yeah, I think it's definitely within our budget, within our like age range. So why not? Why not?
Joe, what do you think about the fee that's out there? It seems to be between 15 and 20 for his transfer fee, and then his salary only being around 1 million. That seems like a steal, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
and
seems a bit
this
low.
is
Yeah.
the classic Napoli transfer, right? Like you find a guy that's young that you can get for relatively low cost, and then develop him, and either he stays or you can flip him and turn a big profit. And we just continuously do that. I almost wish, not that I wish he had a bad World Cup, but generally I'm a little bit leery about signing guys who you only discovered at the World Cup. But from what I've read, the club has been watching him for a while now, and so all the World Cup did was attract competition. We've seen him linked to PSG now and things like that. So I almost feel like we got a little bit screwed by the World Cup. But I've also seen reports. I mean, there's so many conflicting reports on this, but there have been reports that he wants to join Napoli, which is always good when you have the players backing, and then it's just a matter of convincing the club, which usually comes down to the price tag. So let's see. I think he could be an interesting addition, and it'll also be interesting to understand, what are the implications of bringing in a player like that? Does that mean we might sell someone like Zielinski? Maybe not right away. I mean, generally, you probably bring in a player like that to play a season first, and then we could be signing someone's replacement, but we might not find that out for another season or two.
Just to add to that, I think it might be that we don't confirm Ndombele, and so then we take this guy instead, because Ndombele, it might cost us 30 million to sign, and I don't think he's played enough minutes, shown enough to justify that price tag, plus the salary that he'd want. So I think this would be a move to replace him more than Zielinski. And then the other thing that I wanted to say about Tuani is I forgot what I was going to say about Tuani, but there was something. if I remember,
back
I'll
to you,
get
man.
back to you.
All right. And then, like, in the summer, do you feel like there's, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 players that you could predict right now that'll probably be sold and not be with Napoli next year? And do you think that there's anybody that we should be looking at? for this summer, especially with other players that are departing. Like Ozyman's contract is it expires next year. Like this summer, if he doesn't get extended, you would think would be the summer that he would sell. So what do you think is going to happen with Victor?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? I mean, I think I read the other day that De Laurentiis has put a price tag of 140 million euros on his head, which is a typical De Laurentiis move. And actually, usually when he does that, it means he does not want to sign. It's kind of like the message he's sending is, if you want this guy, you need to pay out of your socks to get him. So hopefully they do extend him, because in either case, extending him is the best thing for us, right? Whether we want to sell him or not. I mean, the closer you get to the end of that contract, the harder it is to sell, the lower the value of the player is. So hopefully they can extend this contract first. And who knows, maybe what happens with Osimhen could depend on how things go for the rest of this season. You know, how far do we get in the Champions League? Do we win the Scudetto? That may convince him to stay. That may even convince him to leave. Maybe he feels like he's accomplished what he's needed to accomplish at Napoli, and he's looking for a bigger challenge like an English club. Or maybe he feels happy with that and wants to continue that success here. It's so difficult to predict. I also wonder if, if we were to sell Osimhen, does that mean that we are going to go out and try to find another striker, or do we become more reliant on Raspadori and Simeone? I'd be a little bit concerned in the latter, because Osimhen is such a difficult player to replace. Strikers are few and far between. So, Raspadori has been very good for the Italian national team, but can he be your number 9? I'm not so sure.
I'm going to be honest with you, Joe. Like, just talking about this, it brings back the memories of when Cavani was sold, and like Napoli was ready to take the next step if Cavani stayed and Cavani was sold. And nobody can deny that Victor Osimhen probably wants to go somewhere where he can make a whole lot more money in his salary. And I really don't know what Laurentis is willing to do with that on bumping his salary up. Dom, do you think Laurentis is willing to budge on his stinginess with his annual salary restrictions that he's recently, put on, like his minimum? And do you think he's willing to go well above that to extend Victor?
I think for a young guy like Victor, I think it's maybe a different set of rules than it was for Insigne, Mertens, Koulibaly, who obviously, like, he wasn't willing to give them such a huge salary this year. So for Victor, he might be able to do something extra. I also think it depends on how well we do in the Champions League. That's a lot of money. If we go through different rounds, hey, then the budget's there, right? But either way, I think even if we do, in the worst case, have to sell Osimhen because maybe his head's not in the club anymore after the summer. I hope not. I hope he stays. But hypothetically, we've always had good number 9s with De Laurentiis. If there's one position that he's not compromised on, it's the number 9. So I'm sure if Victor leaves, there's going to be another big player there. You can bet that De Laurentiis, will give us a good number 9 either way. I think he's very old school in that. He sees teams like 10 people plus a striker. So
Look at our bench. We have Simeone and Raspadori there. They can both, I feel like, start on more than half the teams right now in our league, really.
Okay, we'll have to see what happens there. I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit nervous about it. Like I said, it's starting to make me feel like that one summer when Cavani got sold, and it took a while for Napoli, I think, to recover from that to become like what I thought was really a contender then. I really think they just needed 1 or 2 defensive additions to start winning Scudetti if they would have kept Cavani. With this team, they just need a couple like small tweaks. It isn't like it was when it was with Cavani. And I'm just hoping ADL realizes that and he's willing to to pay the salary that Victor's willing to stay for, because you have to realize how much more money he can make at some of the other clubs. Now, a lot of the other clubs out there that have the money, a lot of them already have a number nine. So, I mean, I don't think Victor's going to want to go somewhere he's not the guy, but
Yeah,
we'll have to see, man.
I
There's a
think
lot of demand for strikers in the Premier League, though. That's one of the concerns, and those clubs, they don't mind paying to sit a guy on the bench. The reason why I really hope we don't sell Victor, though, is because you look at the financial situation at Inter, you look at the financial situation at Juventus, and we could have a couple of really good years here, if to your point, then if we could keep him and make a few tweaks here and there, a few more improvements. It's a relatively young squad with a relatively low salary budget, so we're set up for a few good years of success, hopefully.
I just to your point, Dan, I disagree that the other teams are set up across Europe. I don't think Bayern have a recognizable number 9 now that they've lost Lewandowski. I don't think Lewandowski is going to stick around with Barcelona for too long in terms of like how much can he do. He's 35 almost now. Real Madrid have got Benzema, but again, he's now aging. Man United, they've lost Ronaldo, haven't really replaced him with anyone big. Arsenal have got Jesus, but is he really the type of guy that can, score 20 plus goals in a season? No. So I honestly think that there's 5, 6 clubs that could afford him that are actually needing a number 9 of his caliber. So that worries me a little bit. What worries me is also Elmas. Is he going to accept another season on the bench, being the 12th man? And yeah, for me, those are the 2 biggest questions. Kim as well. He's got a lot of suitors, but I think he would stay because he just joined. But yeah, Elmas and Osimhen are 2 things that we need to properly address this summer.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then God, there's just one more thing I wanted to talk about, and it's lost my brain for a sec. Hold on. I'm glad this is not live. Current Napoli drip. So I don't know if either of you have actually said much about that Christmas kit. Oh my God, what an embarrassment. So great thing for like the kids to wear with the family Christmas tree picture, maybe making some freaking shortbread cookies or a ginger house or something and taking a video of that. But man, that kit, what an embarrassment. I don't know of any other kit in the history of the ADL area, the ADL era that I can think of, other than maybe that jeans kit that was as embarrassing. What did you guys think about that? I mean, even the ruled off design in itself was just cartoonish. It was terrible. What did you guys think about it?
For me, I mean, I'm glad one that it was released during the World Cup break, so there was no chance that it could be worn in a competitive match. We wore them in the friendlies, fine, who cares? The funny thing is, before they released the adult version, I showed it to my son, and he loved it. He said, "Daddy, please buy it for me." So for a kid's shirt, cool, fine. My son liked it, so who am I to argue with that? But do I want that myself as an adult? Definitely not. It looked like it was a bit of a kind of clip art type of shirt. So yeah, that's a no for me.
Hey Dom, what do you think? Do you think ADL and the marketing team on Napoli were listening to the negative feedback, and that had something to do with that kit not being worn at the San Siro for their first game back? I mean, it wasn't even La Befana yet, so we were still in the holiday. What do you think? Do you think that he was gonna like have them wear that and he changed his mind?
I can't imagine that was part of the plan, man. Like, there's no way he thought we're gonna go to the San Siro and wear that kit. I think it was always meant to be a training and friendly type of kit. Honestly, I think the initiative is nice. Something cool for Christmas for the kids. It brings the kids closer to the team, closer to football in general or soccer in the States. But I'm just very glad it's not there in official tournaments. But yeah, at the same time, I like the fact that they're experimenting with things. Not everything's gonna stick, right? But hey, maybe if they've got this mentality that they're willing to try things out, maybe some huge breakthrough might happen. It might not in maybe in terms of shirt designs, but maybe they experiment a bit with shirts, a bit with their distribution, a bit. They like, for example, these shirts, they've got a completely different distribution channel and method than other teams. Maybe some experiments work, and maybe that could propel Napoli to much more revenue, or a new fan base or whatever. So I'm all for it. What if they got to lose?
Yeah, exactly.
You
Just to
know,
add to that, the innovation really was the fact that we took shirt production in house. No other club does that, right? Everyone uses Nike, Adidas, whoever. And what a lot of people don't realize is that clubs get very little of that revenue from those shirt sales. It's something like 10%. It's very low. When you're producing the shirt yourself, though, you need to have a high volume because we don't get the efficiencies of scale that a Nike or an Adidas gets, where they produce basically the exact same shirt for 10 different clubs. They just change the colors, but they sell so many because of that they make their money that way. So, a lot of fans of other clubs make fun of Napoli for having so many different kits. But this is really an innovation. This is another, De Laurentiis playing 4D chess, we like to say, right? Where he's come up with another way to generate revenue. And yeah, we don't have as many trophies as we would like to have, but financially, the club is always in a very good situation. So for me, yeah, we might have some shirts that we don't like, and that's fine. They seem to sell out no matter what. So there's enough people that like them. And if that's improving our bottom line, which is helping us to buy players and keep players and pay wages and all these other things, then I'm all for it.
I went to dinner with Dom and I wore the Christmas sweater. Man, that Christmas sweater's fire.
That's
And
nice.
me being a fat boy, able to wear that thing, I was nervous, man. I was like, okay, how's this gonna be when it comes in the mail? Am I just gonna, not wear it because it's gonna be too tight? And it wasn't. So I was very happy about that. So I loved that sweater. But dude, everything is made for the player. When are they gonna come out with the fan gear that fat dudes can wear? Everything is skin fit, man. I mean, my boy looks good and everything. Look at him. But I'm sitting over here trying to freaking suck in every time I'm in a picture because everything I'm wearing is just too tight. I mean, can't he just come up with some fat boy shit, man? What's the deal?
That aren't replicas, yeah,
Yeah, something, man. I mean, everything's too tight. Dom, you're good to go. You're slim. You're good.
Yeah, I don't
but
have
I
those
ain't
problems, man.
Dude, I am not the only fat dude out there that wants to buy gear, man. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I do like the uniqueness and all that but it would be nice if there was just more gear that was, like this thing that my boy's wearing. You know what size this is for me? In order for me to wear it, you're not gonna guess. Oh no, wait, not this. It's the polo. The polo from last year. Guess what size that is for me to be able to put that on this back?
Double XL.
6XL. I ain't ever seen any other shirt, whether it's a polo, a jersey, a freaking tank top. 6XL, man. When I saw that, I was like, 6XL? So, oh man, I just want some stuff that I can be more comfortable in and not be embarrassed about when I'm taking a picture and I gotta suck in, you know what I mean?
That's true. If we're gonna do things for kids, we gotta do things for all adults as well. At that point, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all, man. I don't think there's anything. Oh no, the one other thing that I did want to mention. I know you're into food, Dom. I know that you've done some videos, especially back in the day where you're like showing us cooking some stuff, and I've seen you open a pizza box and all that. So, I think that I'm gonna talk about food just a little bit when I'm doing my trips and everything. And bro, have you been to Genova?
No, but I know that you can eat very well there. Pesto is from Genoa, and I hope you guys had some there.
Oh man, I had spaghetti Genovese. from a restaurant that was called Il Genovese. Me and my boy and Oma went there, and dude, it was fire. And then you got some meatballs, right?
Yeah, I mean they're really known for meatballs down there too. I didn't know that. They had some pesto meatballs. We had a whole variation, like it was a plate. It was like a gourmet feast right there. You know, they had 7 different flavors of meatballs. One was pesto, one was meat sauce. Just a whole bunch of different things. And I was really impressed with the food down there.
You know, the other thing about Genoa that I noticed like right away, and it repeated itself over and over again, just walking around the town, man, it feels like Napoli, man. It really does. I mean, the reputation it has is real. Uh, I literally there was moments where I was like, "Wait a minute, no, I'm not in Napoli, right? I'm in Genoa." And then we went down to the waterfront, and it was the last day that we were there. It was really sunny, so we got lucky with having one day of actually being able to walk around and enjoy ourselves. But I've eaten all over Italy, and Genova is definitely one of the best places for cuisine, man. That Genovese, the meatballs that he was talking about, they even make really good coffee, and some of the places, man, up in the north that have coffee, man, just don't know what they're doing. So I was very happy to have a good cup of coffee, and yeah, I think I'm definitely gonna want to talk about food because I fucking love food. That's how I'll be part of the channel. I mean, food is life, man. You know what I mean? So yeah, we had a pizza before the pod, and
You still
finally
seem
there's a
hungry.
dude. What's that?
You still seem hungry.
Yeah, I mean, finally, there's a dude here near the house up here in the north that makes me feel like I'm going to a pizzeria napoletana too. It's they've got some other places that try, but it's just not the same as this guy, man. I mean, you walk in and like that's a little broken and that's broken, and they're all talking and yelling and stuff, and you're like, shit, man, I'm in Napoli, bro. This is it right
It's
here.
very hard to find
And
that
then
kind of
the pizza
atmosphere up
comes like
north.
super fast, and
Yeah.
and he just throws it at you, and you're like, yeah, man, this is how I want my pizza. You know what I mean? And he's got just one beer on tap and nothing fancy, man. There's a couple tables outside, but its pizza's fire, and it's €5.
Nice.
I mean, the €5, that's Napoli too, man, because the pizzas at the other places are like 6, €7 or something.
The
So
cheaper it is, the better, more authentic. Everybody knows that.
All right.
yeah, man, you got some places to get some pizza napoletana there, don't you, Dom, in Barcelona?
Yeah, there's a few. Fortunately, not many like in my like vicinity. I have to walk maybe like 10, 15 minutes. So if I need something urgent, then I know maybe people in the States are like, dude, 10 minutes is like nothing. But in Europe, like distances are different, all right? In Europe, if
Yeah,
something's
you're
not
right.
within a 2-minute walk, it's like basically another neighborhood. So yeah.
What about you, Joe? Where do you go to get your favorite pizza in
Well, that's
Toronto?
what I was gonna say to Dom's complaining about a 15-minute walk. We got to go for like a 15-30 minute drive to get the right place because for us, I'm in Toronto, but North America pretty much the same. It's a big city, but most of the good stuff is either it's like a mom and pop shop somewhere in the middle of nowhere, or it's sort of in the heart of the city, and then you got to deal with traffic and all these other things to get it. So we have a couple of good spots here. But yeah, it's definitely not walking distance.
You don't go to the Starbucks that Insigne goes to all the time to
Which
try
I
to.
mean, I don't need to because there's one on like every corner, whether it's Starbucks or the big coffee place actually here is Tim Hortons, if you guys have heard of it. But
Yep.
it's
Oh,
your
okay.
chain style, Dunkin' Donuts style type of thing. Yeah, it's not the greatest. Your best bet is just to make it yourself, I think.
I know Mario said that he wants to get to Toronto here
Oh yeah,
sooner than later,
it's
and
beautiful down there.
I'd like to too, and maybe New York, and yeah, but man, I'm in Italy, so it's not that easy to get over there. New York's not across the street, so. Okay, well, Napoli Nation, that was fun. That was the first show. So this is a preview of what's going to happen in the future. Hopefully, we'll be able to be consistent with being on at least once a week. I really don't know what day, what time. I haven't really figured that out yet. And that has a lot to do with the fact that my son actually lives in California and I live in Italy. So we're not right next to each other all the time. Right, Joe, with the time difference? So yeah, we'll try to be as consistent we can, and we want your feedback. If there's anything that you would like us to talk about on a consistent basis, if there's when it comes to the trips that I go on, if there's anything that you want me to talk about food wise or something in the city that you want me to go see and maybe talk about that a little bit, I'm game with that too. But like I said, it was fun, especially since I'm doing it with my son. Yeah, that was awesome. And Joe, Dom, thank you again for coming on.
It was our
And we'll
pleasure,
see you
man.
next time. We'll see you
Yeah,
next
my
time.
pleasure. And I've always wanted to do it, so I'm gonna steal the moment. I'm gonna steal Dom's line and make sure you smash that like button and smash that subscribe button.
Yeah, there you go. I gotta come up with my own line, man. That smash
You
like
guys don't
button.
need me anymore. You guys don't need me anymore. Joe's got the catchphrase. You've got the video. I can retire.
All right, fellas, I appreciate it, man. We'll see you soon.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming on. Bye, guys.
Ciao. Ciao.